Stop driving and start discovering. We just launched the History or Drive app. It turns your phone into a professional tour guide with over 500 historic locations. Want to go where we've gone? Access expert videos and podcasts that sync with your route. With one-click directions, history is just a turn away. Grab our launch pass for just $2.50. That's full access through the end of 2026 for less than a cup of coffee. Visit historyordrive.com today and start your next history road trip. That's historyordrive.com.
Hyper-partisan media wars, intense political gridlock, and a divided nation that feels like it's on the brink. Sounds like today's evening news, right? Actually, it sounds a lot like 1796 or 1856 or 1876. Today, we're taking a road trip through time with some of the wildest, most chaotic, and deeply divided chapters of American history with a guest who knows exactly how to prove that our past definitely doesn't suck. I am thrilled to be sitting down today with Professor Greg Jackson. He's the host of the hit podcast, History That Doesn't Suck, the America 250 professor in the Center for Constitutional Studies, associate professor at Utah Valley University, and the author of the upcoming book hitting shelves this June. Been there, done that, how our history shows what we can overcome. Greg uses his signature narrative storytelling and trademark humor to pull back the curtain on the darkest moments of our history, reminding us that we've been in these exact trenches before and we prevailed. We're going to talk about why the good old days of polite politics are a total myth, how past generations managed to transcend grave differences, and what we can learn from them today. Grab your map, turn up the volume, and let's jump into our conversation with Professor Greg Jackson. Greg, thanks so much for joining us.
Scott, thank you. Jen, it's so good to see both of you, to hear both of you. I'm honored.
So thanks for coming on. So for our audience, this is a unique opportunity for us. As we were just chatting before we hit record, we actually attended one of Greg's shows. While we were in Norfolk, we were still doing the podcast on our living room table, breaking it down every couple days and putting it back up, as you do when you start off something and you're kind of bootstrapping. And now we're here talking to you on the podcast. So thanks so much for joining us, Greg. If you could just kind of briefly talk about yourself, and then let's just jump right into this book, because this sounds like a perfect book for today's time.
Well, thank you for that. I hate to waste too much time talking about me. The highlights, I think you've nailed them there. I've been doing History That Doesn't Suck for almost 9 years, which is crazy to me. Yeah. I realize that's gone up. I've been a history nerd my entire life. I tried to talk myself into majoring in something else in college because I was, of course, told by everyone who cares about me that I'll be unemployable. And I'm glad I didn't let them talk me out of it. And of course, it's also turned out that things have been okay. I've built an all right career. Yeah. A PhD in history, a master's in French. That's always kind of a fun little nugget to drop. So yeah. Always happy to parler if someone's game for that. But History That Doesn't Suck has really been my passion and drive for a number of years. And of course, I started doing this live show and then writing this book. And for me, this has been an opportunity to explore our history in a way I hadn't even thought to have. As much as History That Doesn't Suck has pushed me, this has been quite an exercise, a deep dive.
So tell us, and from what I read and when I was kind of doing my own little bit of research, and I always caution folks when the non-history guy does research, don't trust me too much. So Jen is not afraid to correct me if I get something wrong. But from what I was reading, you kind of covered 7 or 8 kind of specific parts of our history. One of the things that I've mentioned in the intro is everybody nowadays kind of thinks we are in these unprecedented times, right? This political strife and turmoil. Yeah. What's in your book? What's something you studied from the past that actually drew some pretty close parallels to? If you read about it without names and maybe without too much context, people would think, hey, that sounds like today, and it was actually the 17 or 1800s.
Yeah, I mean, that is what every chapter does. And in fact, the fact that you even used the phrase unprecedented times, you're so right. We hear that language.
Yeah.
An earlier title of the book was Precedented Times.
Yeah.
And we decided that was perhaps a little too clever for its own good. and went to, been there, done that, which, articulating that same idea more colloquially.
Yeah.
But the big things that are themes that you find in every chapter are, one, deeply biased, if not fake news. And I came to appreciate the meaningful difference between the two of those as I wrote this book. I initially thought I was just going to be exploring how fake news has always been there, and it has always been there. But this process led me to see the fine and meaningful delineations between fake news and biased news. We can dig into that if you want. But to keep, laying out the other things, partisan violence. We have an illusion that liberal democracy or a constitutional republic somehow wipes us clean of these sorts of, the worst aspects of humanity. And I came to appreciate in writing this book on a far deeper level, no, that's very much there. But our system keeps those forces at bay better than other systems do. But better than is not perfect. And so it's not surprising when we put that lens on to realize that, there is chapter after chapter after chapter in our history. I'm talking beyond my book, but in a broader sense of political violence throughout the United States history. And we can simultaneously acknowledge that is not okay. That's not our ideals. And yet that is human and it's going to happen. And we continue to strive toward being a more perfect union that better keeps that in check. But these past episodes reassure me when I see them play out today. We aren't doing worse than past generations, which also means we aren't on the precipice necessarily.
Yeah. So you talk about this, right? We've been there, we've done that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's like, give our audience kind of like a sneak peek into your book. What's an example? What's an event? Whether it's within we talk about kind of political violence. Sure. The caning of Charles Sumner, right, within Congress, or the corrupt election of 1876. Like, what's an example of of something like that that you wrote about in your book?
Yeah, why don't we go into the election of 1876? I mean, that is, in my opinion, it is without question the most corrupt, the worst election in the presidential election. Let me clarify. In U.S. history. And I say that with full mind toward the 21st century, with no dismissal toward very real and painful happenings that we've all lived through. Mm-hmm. This is an election where, just to rattle off a few, we'll call them fun facts, though they're not fun, they're more disturbing. The body count in South Carolina, conservatively, included 150 dead Black Americans. Conservatively. I'm using a number from a lost cause apologist on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if that's his number for how many, right, how many Black Americans were killed in South Carolina, then we can only imagine how much higher that goes. Ballot stuffing, left, right, and center. There are some Americans who probably voted more times in 1876 than some of us will vote in our entire lifetime. One gentleman in particular cast 72 ballots. That is demonstrated fact.
Who was up for election in 1876?
For president? Rutherford B. Hayes.
Yep.
And then I don't know who was running opposed.
Sam Tilden. He was the Democratic.
Tilden.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was the Democratic candidate.
So was this on both sides of it?
Well, so here's the funny thing is a lot of the seediness that was playing out particularly in the South as Reconstruction was coming to an end. Reconstruction, I'm sure your audience knows, but I'll go ahead and define it. That era after the Civil War, where we're trying to put the nation back together, and it includes 3 wonderful amendments that were intended to really bring Black Americans into the fold, into our republic in a meaningful way. And a lot of violence broke out. The Democratic Party, which was the dominant party of the South, former Confederates, very much filled its ranks. and they resorted to absolute violence, organized on a high level. Ku Klux Klan being the most famous, but basically functioning as a paramilitary branch of the Democratic Party. So they were these enforcers that quite literally chased off violently Republican voters, which black Southerners, by and large, there were actually those who did cast the occasional Democratic ballot, but most were Republican. And they would violently and even murderously chase them off. So that was happening in the build up to the election. But then when it got challenged, and that's a story that I happily go into if you want to.
Yeah.
All right. You know who Dan Sickles is? General Dan Sickles.
Oh, we know Dan Sickles.
Everybody loves a crazy guy in history, right? Dan Sickles is that guy.
Yeah.
Dan Sickles is that. Oh, go ahead, Jen.
Oh, no, I was just Francis Scott Key's son. I just went to his grave, Philip, right? And I told the story, right? And I told the story about Lafayette Square and the first time, being tried for insanity and how he won and just the craziness of it all.
So how was Dan Sickles involved in this challenging of the election?
Okay, so check this out. Dan Sickles is a lifelong Democrat, okay? But he's not a staunch party guy at the same time. In fact, I think it's fair to say he's really not a loyal Democrat at all, but he loves to play that card. He always talks about himself as a lifelong Democrat, okay? So after the election, it's election night, 1876. He's been to dinner, he's been out with his friends. He swings by Republican national headquarters. Again, he's a Democrat, but think about how the Civil War's changed things up. He's supporting the Republican candidate, our buddy Rudd Hayes.
Yeah.
He went by Rudd. Let's call him Rudd. The reason Dan is supporting him is because they are brothers in arms.
Yeah.
Right? This is a Civil War veteran, a general, in fact.
Yeah.
Whereas Sam Tilden did not fight. So for Dan, he's like, I got to cross party lines. I can't vote against, a fellow officer of the Union Army. So he shows up at Republican headquarters. Place is deserted. Everyone's given up. It looks like Rudd has lost by 20 electoral votes. It's just a blowout. There's only one official electoral vote needed more for Sam Tilden to have won. And the popular vote, Sam is up by 250,000. Right? Just game over. Half of the party, I kid you not, have taken off to just go drink themselves to sleep. It's the 19th century. Sure. I think things were a little looser back then. And so Dan starts poring over the returns as they have them. The partial returns, let's be clear on that. He's doing some math and he realizes that if, long shot, but if South Carolina, Florida, Louisiana, and Oregon all come back Republican, Rudd actually squeaks it out. So he's pouring over, again, like everybody's gone except for one clerk. So he's trying to talk this clerk into telegraphing these states, all of which, the three southern ones are run by Republican governments. And he's trying to get this clerk to send out a telegram saying, hold your state. Now, what does that mean? Hold your state. Does that mean hold out? Does that mean hold out in an unethical way? We don't get to really know.
Interesting. Yeah.
But this is when our buddy Chester Arthur, Chet, future president, right?
Future president after, Garfield.
So he's going down the hall. Dan's like, Chet, hold up, man. I need you to see this. Chet says, sure, one minute. He's got to help one of the other party leaders to a cab because the guy can't walk straight. He's so slammed, just absolutely plastered, right? So Chet helps their colleague get to a cab, comes back up, looks it over and goes, oh, yeah. Oh, beautiful. Now, remember, Chet, he's a party boy and when I say party boy, I mean Republican Party, right?
Yeah. And he likes to party.
That he does, right? All of the things, but party machine. He's a party animal machine from New York. So yeah, he likes it. And so now with that blessing, the clerk's like, okay, so they send out, this message to the 4 states and they hold and they hold. They all end up disputed. So the next day, newspapers across the nation are saying Sam Tilden, except for the very Republican New York Times, which says, oh, no. The official results are not in, and actually, basically says, Rudd's in it. So this is when all the nasty, it's like you're about to go flip a house and you pull back the first floorboard. Things looked okay, and now you see the black mold
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens. So as the challenge is put into place, this is where news, scrutiny, and party leaders start showing up in all the states. And this is where we start learning, Democrats have literally killed mostly black, but Republican voters. Chased them off from the polls. Republicans, meanwhile, controlling the governments through the Reconstruction process, absolutely corrupt. Corrupt to the bone, purposely excluding Democratic districts in the count. Basically zero tolerance for any sort of potential misstep. You're looking for technicalities, you can throw things out, right?
Yep.
Meanwhile, Republican precincts, they're very quick to just be like, yeah, it's cool. I think that's fine. And you've got legal challenges and attempted bribes come out. Some of this takes years to actually become entirely clear. The Democrats sent about 600 coded telegrams to South Carolina alone, in which they were trying to buy electoral voters, flat out, full stop. And cases of money were taken to the South by congressional leaders to facilitate bribes.
Wow.
So, and the long story short is that South Carolina, Florida, and Oregon all ended up sending 2 sets of electoral votes. The states were so contested, both parties claimed to have won and sent their own sets of votes. Wow. And here's the real kicker. Florida beat them all. They sent 3 sets because the Democrats sent 2. They sent what they did when the Republicans controlled the government, but after they had won the election on the state level, they then turned around and said, here's another one. Boom.
So how did they end up?
So how did Hayes squeak it out?
Who made the call?
Yeah. So this now goes to Congress right now. For those who know their Constitution, they know that the vast majority of all things vote related is a state power. The Constitution is very brief on what it says about anything having to do with the electoral process. It names some minimum ages for certain federal offices, right? Congress, both the House and Senate, President, 35.
Yep.
But by and large, the electoral process is very much with the states. So what does Congress do when a state has multiple claimants to that power? And I get in the chapter, I get into all sorts of history that builds up to this, where there's precedent that go both ways through various elections, but it never actually became a dividing point. There were some elections where Congress even said, you know what, the numbers are either this or that, but it doesn't matter because, it doesn't impact the outcome. And they even had some debates, notably one in the 1850s, where Andrew Butler, whose cousin Preston, gets really upset and canes Charles Sumner nearly to death, right? Preston Brooks. Andrew Butler, they're discussing, whether they count a state that failed to vote on the appointed day because of a snowstorm. They cast their electoral votes the next day. And it turns into this huge debate of, but the state cast it and the state has the power to vote. Yeah, but there is a day specified by federal law. Okay, so they were in accordance with federal law, but this is a state power. Do we count the vote? Do we not? And again, at the end of the day, they're kind of like, whatever, it doesn't impact the outcome. But you had those senators who were like, no, this is really important. This could be a problem later.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like what we do now could set the tone for later.
Yep. And so you had people on both sides going, precedents really are important. What we do matters here. So by the time we get to 1876, Congress has 4 states, 3 of which have 2 sets of returns, 1 of which has 3 sets of returns. And Congress has to somehow sort out with precedents that kind of lean all directions. What do they do? So they set up a commission that sifts through it. And I don't want to ruin it all, but
exactly.
No, I mean, you have me hooked, man. I was like, I obviously we know how it turns out, but it's still so interesting, and that's what's fun about a book like this, right? Is it's kind of what Jen tries to do on the channel all the time when we're going somewhere. Is like, hey, here's something that happened back then. Here's how it affects us today, but here's the parallels.
Yeah, a lot of times people don't know how the history affects them today, but it does. Right. And I try to remind them, you may not realize what is impacting you, but this is what happened in the past that impacts you. But I love that you did this, Greg, because so much. I'm sure you hear it all the time as a historian. I hear it all the time as a historian. What do I think of the times? Where do I, how do I feel about certain things that are happening today? And I always go back to,
absolutely.
Well, the truth is they're both corrupt. They're both sides. That's the truth. And people are always looking for a historian to lean one way or the other. And I always say, but the history doesn't lean one way or the other. That's why I hate when people say the right side of history. I'm like, the right side is the truth. That's the only side of history. There's no right or wrong side. It's whatever's the truth. The history leans there. And so I'm always, I look at historians sometimes who take a side, and I'm always like, that you're doing a disservice to history by doing that, because it doesn't belong to one side or another. It doesn't, one side or another isn't justified in either of this. It's both sides. History is, both sides are doing it. Both sides are doing the same thing. You see it on one side, you'll find it on the other. And if you want to tell the truth, you have to tell the truth about all of it.
You do. I think it becomes an excuse sometimes of the other side did this. Mm-hmm. And I will say, of course, we don't want to give the pass of kind of doing the King Solomon 50-50.
Yeah.
But that's not what you're saying, and that's not what we're doing. Mm-hmm. It's important to point out that human nature comes to play in both of the parties, and at one point one might be more egregious than the other, but it's constant. And the shots are fired at both parties. I'm not here to be judge or jury. I'm here to as a historian, I try to do my best to just lay it out. I will say I'm kind of proud of the fact that I have bipartisan blurbs. There is a Republican senator and a Democratic congressman who both blurbed for the book. Which I was elated that came through. I really had moments where I thought, as we were looking for these blurbs, I don't know who's gonna feel like I took more of a shot at him, which I think speaks to the fact that I really wasn't trying to take shots. I'm just trying to lay out that 100%. The fight is real.
Yeah. And I love that, Greg. We've been accused of being left-leaning and right-leaning for the same video.
Yeah. Right? Oh, yeah, that just means you're doing it right. I've got the same thing for
which we were like,
episodes.
yes, we did it. And I think it was Fort, what was the fort where
Fort Pillow?
Jefferson Davis was his last prison or something.
Fort Monroe.
Fort Monroe. It was that video we were talking about. We were just talking about Jefferson Davis. These are some of his last days where he's held in prison down there for a while. And people are like, oh, you're a Southern sympathizer, or you're on this side, you're on that side. We're like, well, there's both on the same video.
He was held. Yeah. And he was held, he was held on charges. This is the honest truth. Those charges were for the Lincoln assassination. That's actually what they grab him on, right? And then there's no evidence, and he's held for 2 years. It's anyhow. That's an interesting.
But I think I'm so proud of you, because when you do something like that and you get blurbs from both sides, it means you're doing your job and you're doing it well.
Thank you.
Because I believe history belongs to all of us. It's not one-sided. It's everybody's, and a good historian is going to show you why. And when I listen to you, Greg, I tell Scott, I jog to you all the time, right? I put on History That Doesn't Suck. I go for a nice jog. I've learned so much. Even when I'm the historian on American Cruise Line, I do a bunch of their cruises. And when we went to Ellis Island, I used so much of your Ellis Island talk to educate people about Ellis Island, who's coming through Ellis Island. I loved how you used Frank Capra's family. It's a Wonderful Life is my favorite movie of all time. Right? And I love how he's inspired by the American dream, and he's coming through Ellis Island. I just love how you connect all of that.
Thank you.
And that story belongs to everybody. And I love historians who do that, because I think they're doing the true work. And so I just commend you on that. This book is for everyone. We can see ourselves in every story.
Well, and Jen, I wrote it for everyone. This is, in a way, it's my love letter to Lady Liberty. I believe so deeply, fervently in the ideals of the American Republic. I absolutely reject the idea that our best days are behind us. That is, if they are, that's our choice. And if the Republic is at its end, that's our choice. if you really believe in the idea of we the people, of government by the people and for the people, then, well, it's as Lincoln said, it's our fate to either, paraphrase, semi-quote him, as a nation of free men, it's our fate to either die at our own hands or to live in perpetuity. And I very much believe that that's the case. So for me, this American experiment continues to be worthwhile, and this history is it's filled with ugly episodes, but also with great achievements. And the reason I decided to write a book that actually highlights our lows, I did it from, I think, an angle that's pretty kind of weird. It's different for a historian. I wanted to highlight those lows, not to say, oh, look at the hypocrisy of America. I wanted to highlight those lows to say, look at what we can beat. Yeah. Look at what we're better than. Right? Yeah. This is us on our worst day. So, to sit here and say, oh, I don't think I can summit this mountain. Dude, you've climbed the 7 peaks. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You got this, Uncle Sam.
I'm glad you brought that up because, like you said, it seems like, I'd say the overarching theme of the book is looking at these darker spots, these friction spots, right? These kind of, unprecedented. I'm sure every single time they all thought it was unprecedented.
Everyone does. Oh,
everyone does. So as you look across the few historical crises that you profiled in the book, what's the common denominator? What's the secret ingredient that's in the American experiment that repeatedly kind of prevents our worst selves from defeating our better selves? Like, what did you find a theme there?
Yes, and if I may, I call it our fire-resistant structure. That is the Constitution. Yes, the American DNA has very much absorbed, if we can use that in a very intellectual way, right? We've absorbed the idea that we are a free people, that we are a land of liberty, and that kind of flows through us in a way that we very much even take for granted, even as we say those sorts of words. But in the process of writing this book, as much of a revolution fanboy as I already was, I was astounded at how much I ended up getting into political philosophy. I mean, I set out to write a history book, and the conclusion of each of these chapters led me to engage with, the hows and the whys, and come to an appreciation for the architecture of our republic in a far deeper and more profound way. As I read through the Federalist Papers, which was just absolutely essential reading for this, to better appreciate how much thought went into the Constitution. James Madison's describing checks and balances, not just between the branches, which we always think about, but for instance, a favorite of mine was his description of the check and balance between the chambers of Congress, how they very intentionally gave each very different responsibilities, as much as they could, right, for being one legislative body, how they very intentionally made the House a 2-year electoral process and the Senate 6. And in James Madison's book, or rather his Federalist paper, he said this is intentional. The House has to respond to the people. Like, we want that constant, basically the people say jump and a member of Congress says how high while in the air. Yeah. And the Senate, his words, he said that they are there to be a check against the people when we go crazy. Okay, I paraphrased a little bit. Right. But here he was basically saying we want one house that's going to do anything and everything, follow the whims, and another one filled with people who have such a long tenure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a 6-year, that is a while, that they're not going to be afraid to stand up when they see things that are not jiving.
Yeah. I agree. Like, when they sat down and they argued in Congress and argued for the Constitution, and they argued for hours, and they sat in there and they wrote it, and in the Federalist Papers, just like you're saying, like, they're arguing the what ifs and why we did, and
Jen, they went so deep.
They went so deep, right? They really did put a whole blueprint out for us. And they're thinking, people say, what do you think they would say if they saw us today? They would be like, wow, it worked.
They would.
Wow.
No, I think they'd be absolutely shocked that it still exists. And this is not for nothing to point out that, you got a caveat in a number of ways. There are plenty of nations that can claim to be, quote unquote, the oldest. And we always think the United States is so young, but in terms of a written, articulated constitution, not England's, I don't say dismissively of them, right? But they talk about the English Constitution, and any English constitutional scholar will tell you that's kind of the ongoing joke, right? That they're a scholar of a document that doesn't exist. So of course, the idea of English constitutionalism, well, it's able to always stay there no matter how much the government changes. The fact that the king has lost so much power at this point. But my point being, this is, in terms of large nations, it's the longest enduring government that has a written constitution. And that is not, I really came to appreciate in writing this book, that's not just a happy accident. It's not simply inertia. That is because the framework, for all of its shortcomings and failures, and it wasn't perfect. We've amended the thing 27 times.
We have.
Right? And I kind of love, in a weird way, that one amendment was there to say, whoops, that was a bad amendment. This amendment unamends the last, it shows that flexibility. So this ability to harness the power of the people while also, ebbing and flowing, so that every generation, maybe not we don't have to have a 1776 violent revolution, but in a quiet way, we are remaking this Constitution every generation. And that flexibility, that's what allows us to hang in there. If we continue to choose to do so. I want to be very clear that I'm not saying, it's a guarantee, everything's fine, so put your head back down the sand and don't worry. No, please go vote. That's another deep message here. I don't care what your affiliation is politically. Vote, be engaged, be civil, but vote and be engaged. And if a critical mass of Americans will continue to do that, then like Lincoln, I think we will, I agree with him, we will live in perpetuity.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I feel like the Constitution is a living document and you're the life of it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Now, coming from the podcast world, the audio world, to writing a book, right? Was there kind of like a bit of a transition, in effort-wise and mentally? Like, how did you try to keep your voice that you have on your podcast in this book? Like, what was that process like for you?
It wasn't. It's a great question, and I've got an answer, and it's so chicken and egg here.
Yeah.
Because of course, keep in mind, PhD, tenured professor, I was trained to write a book. Right? That's what the dissertation was. But I was trained to write very differently. Right? And the podcast is where I first found this new and different voice. And so bringing that new voice into this book, that it was a fun process. It was exploratory. And it didn't take too long. I feel like it was like going from skateboarding to snowboarding.
Sure.
Very, very natural.
Now, one of the things I believe that you cover in the book is the print wars in the 1790s. At least if I looked that up correctly online. So if we were going to pick one of these publications, pick one of the publications that were in, at the top of these controversial print wars. If one of them were to have a Twitter account today, or an X account, I guess, which one do you think would have the most followers?
Ooh, so let me give you more than one answer.
Sure.
I think Alexander Hamilton would be way up there.
Okay.
Right now, he's not officially a part of a paper, but he's absolutely. We know he did. He wrote under pseudonyms. Hamilton musical nailed it there.
Yeah.
They have to slam each other's under pseudonyms. No doubt, he would have quite the following. But of course, it'd be under a fake account, right?
And that's what I was thinking. Like his Twitter handle would be like Schmalexander Schmamilton.
No. He'd get. I mean, I think his handle would be one of the many we actually see in the chapter. Probably.
Oh yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
But him and then Philip Freneau. Now he's a name that you're not going to know without reading this chapter, most likely. but he was the editor of the National Gazette, which is opposite of the Gazette of the United States. So the Gazette of the United States supported Hamiltonian thought. Basically, it became the rag for the Federalist Party.
Okay.
And the National Gazette, I think it's just wild. 3 days after George Washington signs the bank bill that Thomas Jefferson just loathed, and of course Alexander Hamilton thought was brilliant. I mean, it was literally his idea.
Yeah.
Jefferson reaches out to Philip Freneau, who's an old classmate of James Madison's from their Princeton days. Okay. And offers him a job. Remember that Jefferson at this point is the Secretary of State, right? So he offers him a modestly paying, but will cover the bills job at State that he flat out, it's in the letter, okay? I'm not making this up. It is in his hand, where Jefferson flat out says it does not offer much, but $250 a year. Nonetheless, it gives the holder time to pursue other interests. What he, in between the lines, what he's really saying is, hey, we're going to put you on the government payroll so that
keep writing.
So you can come be the editor of a newspaper that's going to slam the Washington administration while on the payroll. And that's what they do.
I think those two would probably have a fair amount of Twitter followers.
Oh, they would. But I mean, Scott, like, just think about that for a second, man, right? Like,
That's crazy.
You've got these two newspapers. They're our first two national newspapers, right? So first of all, I think it's fun to just point out that we couldn't even get through the first term, the first Washington, right? The first term without parting into two viscerally divided sides with media backing each side, right?
Yeah.
So again, this idea that like, oh, if only media were, as pious and good as they were in the this is human nature.
Yeah.
People are people.
People are people. So and that's where I get encouragement, right? Democracy has always, Americans have always been able to, well enough, without question, we get fooled, we fall for headlines, but the broad strokes in the long run, we sort it out. And we use our vote in a way that has delivered us the modern United States that we are all enjoying today.
No,
So,
I agree.
even those horrendous rags were not able to derail us in the 1790s, nor the many that followed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you spoke about Hamilton. It's funny. I think when we met you, Greg, we had talked about, we know Chris Jackson, who plays George Washington in the musical Hamilton, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And we just saw him again for the Gettysburg Film Festival. And he was talking to someone about playing George Washington. And he goes, you got to remember, George Washington is the only adult in the room. Right? Like, he actually says that. He goes, I knew that playing this part. He's like, I'm the adult here. It's like, it's all these kids fighting each other and doing all this stuff. And I'm supposed to come in with the level head. Like, listen, I've been here, done that. Like, pay attention. So it's very true. We're just saying, like, Hamilton's fighting in the press and Washington's like watching these kids fight. He's like, stop doing this. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, he's trying to like corral them. And then by the time of his second term, he's like, okay, I'm done. I'm out. Peace out. Like,
this is in chapter 1, a favorite moment for me. I love the coincidence of it all. George writes to both Tom and Alex, basically saying, guys, calm, cut this out, right? And I feel like I'm with my two boys, separating them from a fight, right? Like, stop. I love you both. You're both being dumb right in this moment, though. Let's make better choices. And they both write back, same day, dated the same. Both totally like my boys in one of their worst fights. No, it's his fault. There's Thomas Jefferson with his monarchy talk, and Alexander Hamilton, so eloquently, but basically says, but he started it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's too funny. Well, Jen, I'm actually glad that you brought up Chris Jackson, because he was our 100th podcast episode special guest. And Greg, you are actually, and I forgot to mention this earlier, you are our 200th podcast episode guest.
Hey.
So I'm glad you reminded me of that, because I was just so excited to sit down and start chatting with you that fact slipped my mind. So thank you for joining us on our 200th episode here.
It's been my pleasure. Yeah.
All right. So I do have at least one more question that I want to ask, unless you have something, Jen.
No, I'm still kind of fangirling here. So
oh goodness.
Again, because again,
you honor me.
I listen
Thank
to you all the time. I really appreciate what you do, Greg. And we followed you. We came to see you. You shouted us out in the crowd. I just appreciate history content creators who support each other. We're all in this together. I always tell people when it comes to history, you're never going to run out of it. Don't worry. Everyone's got something to say. We never get to spike the ball. All we get to do is run it a little bit further to hand it off to somebody else. You have to understand that's part of the job as well. So this has just been an honor for me to get to talk to you.
Well, thank you. You are really too kind.
Yeah. So Greg, one of the things that Jen and I kind of our mission with Walk with History, our YouTube videos, and then Talk with History, the podcast, is to inspire people to get out there and get to the locations and go see the history for yourself, go see the historic location. We just launched an app that kind of helps with that. It's called History or Drive. And so we're pushing that out there, and it maps the locations of our videos, and you can go get directions there. So for you, if you were going to take a road trip to a historic location for one of the locations that were in your book, where would you go? Where are we going?
Oh, man. Okay. So I'm going to say Philly is a top contender because those two newspapers we talked about, those two gazettes, they're both on High Street. Like they're blocks away from each other.
Of course.
So, and I love, if you'll follow the symbolism here, I love that if you go there today, and I was there just last week doing a show, and I had that thought, like, wow, it was right here. Now, normally I'm thinking about Independence Hall, and that thought crossed my mind too, right? But here's this former capital of the United States, and those two buildings, one I believe is entirely gone altogether. The address is still there, but it's an entirely different structure. And the other I can't recall, I couldn't tell, right, if this is the same building, but definitely no one remembers what it was. It was like a pet daycare now.
Gotcha.
But then you go a few blocks down and there's Independence Hall still standing.
Yeah.
All right, I need say no more. I feel like that the symbolism of that there's a profoundness to it. So I would absolutely say, for all the other rich things that are in Philly, add that to your list. If you are in downtown Philadelphia, head down. I believe it's Market Street now, but High Street is what they called it then. Another fun place to go. Forgive me, I'm going to give you two. And again, I'm using fun in the wrong way. Sure. But New York, Newspaper Row, where the Pulitzer Building, this storied street that used to be where all the media, they called it a row because it was just, you walk down the street and there they were, all these powerhouses. Crazy again to think about how things shift, but they're there. You can go see it. And I do think if you are in DC, you've got to do a tour of the Capitol building. They have kept the old Senate chamber where Preston Brooks nearly killed, right? Congressman, I know we didn't talk about the story, but you can't underscore this enough, right?
I know.
Congressman Preston Brooks assaulted and nearly murdered in raging cold blood, precipitated, right? Planned. Senator Charles Sumner, the man never fully recovered. It took him years to even be truly functional again. And the old Senate chamber served other purposes after the fact, but it has been restored to look exactly the way it did when Senator Charles Sumner's blood seeped into that red and gold star spangled carpet.
Wow.
You can envision it in your mind. And not that it's a pretty thing to envision, but it's a powerful thing to envision. And it's worth remembering. Discourse has been worse. And we've come back from that. And then the last thing I'll say is Baltimore, because we didn't even talk about, but the Baltimore riots. And there are a few markers, a few hints at 1812 Baltimore where, a full-on street battle turned massacre happened between the political parties. And we'll just leave it at that because I know I can't get into everything here.
Well, that's why you wrote the book, so that everybody can go read it.
And then that's why you're talking to us, so they can go visit these locations.
Boom.
That's right.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
And I got maps in the book. So, if you're a map fan,
That's perfect.
That's perfect.
That's even better for our audience. Well, Greg, thanks so much for joining us. For those listening and for those watching, I will absolutely put links to where you can get your book. I think there's the Simon & Schuster website, so you can pre-order the book now if you're listening to the audio podcast version. So
and all the usual places, right? So wherever you like to buy books, Amazon, yes, right, you name it. Yeah.
Would there be a book tour with this?
There is. So we're doing a live show with the book tour. So I'll do the show, and then I'll stick around and sign books afterward. So
that's
awesome.
Yeah, and if you haven't gone to one of Greg's live shows, go.
Yeah.
It is so fun, and it's great. It's interactive. I loved it. It really is a joy. I mean, if you're in the area, I'm going to go again and see you. So, but yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, all the dates and locations, htdspodcast.com, and love to have you guys again.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much again, Greg. For our listeners and our watchers, look in the show notes, look in the video podcast notes, look in the podcast show notes for the link to the book. And Greg, thanks so much for joining us again on this 200th episode of the Talk with History.
My pleasure. Thanks again for having me.
What an incredible conversation with Professor Greg Jackson. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? Knowing that we've walked through these kinds of political and cultural fires before and come out intact on the other side, well, it gives me a lot of hope for where we're heading. Thank you to Greg for coming on the show today. Make sure to grab his new book, Been There, Done That, How Our History Shows That What We Can Overcome, which is hitting shelves this June. I've dropped the link to the book right in the show notes, along with a link to his fantastic podcast, History That Doesn't Suck. Trust me, if you love great storytelling, you need to add it to your queue immediately. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, share this episode with a friend who could use a little historical perspective this week. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Greg. That was super fun.
Oh, thank you.
This has been a Walk with History production. Talk with History is created and hosted by me, Scott Benny. Episode researched by Jennifer Benny. Check out the show notes for links and references mentioned in this episode. Talk with History is supported by our fans at thehistoryroadtrip.com. Make sure you hit that follow button in that podcast player, and we'll talk to you next time.